And how has it been immigrating to the United States? Like everyone in the world knows that now is not the best time to be an immigrant in the US. Like even like ignorant people hiding under a rock in the Australian outback know this is not a good time to be an immigrant to the US. And yet here you are trying to do it. And how has it been?
Listen, when I got here on the last part of the previous administration. I got here in the last of it. And it just flipped from night to day. Like from one day to the other, it was just a totally different scenario. It is different. It is difficult sometimes. Where I live in a red state, considerable red state. We have a left governor, but predominantly red state. I told you that I lived on the border between North and South Carolina. South Carolina is 100% red, like right across the board. Like everything in South Carolina is different. All right. North Carolina is more progressive in terms of ideas. It's more politically correct. Yeah, the North is a little bit more politically correct in terms of how they go about discussing things. South is just, well, you know, if we have to do it, we go all guns blazing. No worries.
And have these new policies, this change in administration, did it affect you personally? Have there been any bureaucratic problems for you, or have you managed to avoid that?
For us, in terms of policies do affect us because of being an immigrant. It does affect us. But it's not to the extent that it affects other people. Right? The whole concept of how we came here was under a program that allows employment and so on and so forth. The concept of affecting is just the paperwork and the bureaucracy that goes with it. It's far more now. The legal loopholes are smaller. The ramifications of one mistake is much higher than before. Like you could have just one error on your paper and like they would be like, "Hush, don't worry about it." Now it's like it feels more like a zero tolerance in terms of anything. That's what it feels like more than anything now. I get it. I understand it in terms of why they're doing it. Do I agree 100% of how they go about it? Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. It's not a job that anybody wants to do. Let's just put it like that.
And how would you compare the immigration bureaucracy with Brazil? Like I remember doing it, and it was never like dangerous or difficult or any of these words were never words I would use with Brazilian bureaucracy, but it was obtuse and annoying and long and unnecessary.
And tiring. Yeah. And tiring is the word that you want. Brazilian bureaucracy was just tiring. It was just never ending. It was just on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And that's one of the things that most people can't stand in Brazil, the bureaucracy, just the paperwork. It's just paperwork on top of paperwork. Like, and you're thinking to yourself, who reads this? Like, you get like a thick piece of paper like this to fill out. And then they're like, oh yeah, come tomorrow and you get another one like this size right here. And you're like, but why? But dangerous would not be a word that I would use in terms of the bureaucracy of Brazil, in terms of immigrants and stuff like that.
No, they would never ever arrest someone or deport anyone ever.
And the concept of deportation is different for them.
Yeah.
You know, go and get a ticket and be right back right here. And it's like, okay. But in terms of like the immigrants in Brazil, because one of the things that I've realized for Brazil in terms of immigrants, Brazil is a true representation of what immigration actually is. I remember seeing a white lady in Brazil, a Caucasian lady in Brazil with a son, African descendant son. For me, it bugged my mind. It really bugged my mind, but it didn't bug my mind after I saw her husband. Then I got it. Her husband was the complete opposite. But the son, his mother was white, his dad was black, and you know, he was just mixed, like really, really mixed. You know, and like for most people, like Brazil, I always say like you can't put a face to Brazilians. You can't. There's no face to Brazilians. I mean, you got beautiful women, beautiful guys, beautiful girls, whatever, but you can't exactly put an exact face to Brazilians. Like you could do like somebody from China, you know, somebody from Asian descent and so on and so forth. You put a face to China. You put a face to Italy. You know, you can kind of put a face to Italy. You can put a face to the Middle East. You can kind of put a face to the Middle East. Britain, the same thing. You can, there you go. You know, you can kind of put a face to it. But for Brazil, you can't put a face to it. You really can't. And that's one of the things in terms of the immigration system. Like, there's no way for you to truly know that somebody's an immigrant in Brazil. There's absolutely no way because everybody looks alike.
Well,
Yeah.
Ryan, I can tell Ryan's an immigrant.
Can you tell, like, before I start speaking?
No.
Like, it's obvious when I start speaking.
It's obvious, yeah.
But before then, I don't think so. Like,
Yeah.
but like my friend Tom, who we were talking about, who is the whitest person ever. I think he stands out a little bit. Like, he's almost clear. You can see through his skin.
But think about it. Let's say, for example, he went to like one of those really south states. He would pass as somebody from there.
But Ronald, I think you seen Ryan coming from afar, wearing a hat, shorts, and a short sleeve shirt. So then you know he's a tourist.
Yeah, I know, but I know how to not dress like a gringo. I know what I'm doing. Like, sometimes I'm like, I'll just dress like a gringo today, whatever. And other days, I'm like, no, I'm riding on the red line. It's not a good day to wear my gringo hat today.
No, that's not safe for me today.
Yeah, not today. No. And I've heard some people say that Brazil doesn't have race. Like you're kind of almost saying that now. And to say Brazil doesn't have race or Brazil isn't racist, is that your experience? Have you had that experience in Brazil, or is that a complete bullshit statement?
All right. Brazil has a problem in terms of classism. The problem with classism is that in Brazil it affects predominantly African descent. All right. So they have a serious problem in terms of classism. But once you have a lot of money, you can kind of buy your way out of that scenario. But here's the thing. If I go to the bank in Brazil and I do suspicious transactions, of course, being a gringo, you have suspicious transactions because you're dealing with outside things. I would not get the benefit of the doubt because one, how are you going to do this? And then when I start speaking in English, it's like, oh, my bad. I'm sorry. You know, that's when everything would be like, oh, let me apologize. I didn't realize what I was dealing with. You know, and then like I've had occasions where, you know, it was questionable. you know, it was questionable. It was to a point where I was like, that didn't feel right. You know, it didn't feel quite right. But it wasn't to the point of I would just shout out, "Oh, racism!" No, it wasn't to that
But
point.
that's the thing about I feel every time I hear a story about racism in Brazil, that's how it feels. It never gets to a. It's always questionable because it seems that everything else in Brazil is always questionable. You never really go 100% into everything. Even like you have the bureaucracy, and you kind of have that, and you kind of have a deportation, and you kind of have a whole business.
It's like we were talking about where friends and business are
Yes.
all mixed together. Well, I
Yeah.
suppose it's the same thing with, well, it's kind of racist, but also
Mm,
maybe not.
maybe
Because of the
not.
overall feeling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like that, but to say like it's 100% like, yeah, that's it, that's what you did, and you know you did it, and not 100%. But at the same time, I will not say that you won't have some people who don't want you there because of the color of your skin.
Mm-hmm.
I will not say that some people don't feel uncomfortable with you there. Um, I've seen situations where people do feel uncomfortable with me there. However, after they realize that I'm not Brazilian, you know, they're like, oh, all right, and they let their guards down. But then it gets me thinking like, so if my son is here and if my son was born here, he would be Brazilian. Like, how would you treat my son? You know, I mean, granted, he would have, you know, his grandmother is outside, his mom is out, both his grandmothers would be outside, you know, so he would have the influence of outside, but his Portuguese would be impeccable. You couldn't exactly tell the difference. But his English would also be impeccable, so you couldn't tell the difference. But he would be in a situation of knowing the culture from the inside.
Yeah.
So it's like, how would you treat him? So it got me thinking along those lines, you know. But to say like it's like you said, it's everything is so blended together in Brazil. It's kind of hard to just take it out and be like, okay, well, this is what this is. But to say that it doesn't exist and to say that people are there that don't have that, that would also be a lie.
Like, I have a situation for you. Just this last week, my wife, Allie, was walking down the street, and Allie has skin more like Rodrigo.
Yeah.
Yes. And this homeless guy came up to her and asked for some help, and she gave him something. I don't know if it was food or whatever. And then he very frustratingly mentioned to her, "Oh, I'm very surprised that you helped me because you're such a privileged white girl." And like she was very surprised at that comment because she had never ever imagined herself as a white girl. But like the homeless guy was a black man. So like I think that kind of shows how Brazil is. That everything is on this spectrum.
On the other hand, Ryan, sorry to interrupt you, but on the other hand, one day we were talking and you told me, no, I said, but for us white people, and you said, what do you mean us? I said, us. I mean you and I, and you said, no, you're not really white, Rodrigo. And I said, what? So
And that goes to what we said earlier in terms of, okay, well, you know, Brazil is not exactly, you know, it's so mixed that you can't exactly get like that full privilege, Rodrigo. Like where you would say, okay, well, you're 100% white, and now, like it's complicated, but at the same time, it's not entirely true because your skin tone in terms of my skin tone are totally different.
Yeah.
So, you know,
yeah,
like
just
somebody would say, well, yeah, he is white, in comparison to my skin tone. And versus your skin tone and Ryan's skin tone, it's barely visible in terms of the difference. But you know, and that's where I think it gets really complicated really quickly for a lot of people.
And then I think this thing that you mentioned about class is a big deal, because like with Ali, if Ali was a poor Brazilian girl, I don't think she would ever get called white.
Probably not.
But because she has privilege, then she suddenly becomes white for whatever reason.
Yeah, but all right. It's hard because, and this is one of the things like what's playing out right now here, because like to say somebody's like totally white here would actually be a lie as well. You have Caucasians, you have that, but some mixing has happened in the United States as well. You know, because like you've got African Americans mixing with Caucasians, and you get mixed kids, and you see it here and there. You know, it's not prevalent, but you see it. And what's happening is that you have the Latinos, and then you have the high complexion Latinos versus the low complexion Latinos, and you have that mix as well. And that's where it's a very thin line. Like for somebody to say like I'm totally white, that bugs me. And for somebody to say like I'm totally black, it bugs me as well. I mean, I get it. I've got more melanin in my skin, which makes me darker than most people. But one of the things that I feel needs to be talked about is the whole, why are we saying that? Why are we classifying people as that? Why is it so important that you're white? Why is it so important that I'm black? Why is it? You know, like, all right, what's the most important color? The green. All right, let's get the green. And then you realize that, well, it's not exactly the green that's that important anymore. You know, well, in the case of does Brazil still have that blue $100 bill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's still the highest note, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the blue in the case of Brazil, that's the most important part in terms of like getting that blue $100 note. You know, like, yeah, I get that $100, that blue. That's what's important. Cool. But like, why are we saying it? Why are we still hung up on this complexion thing? Like, why is it such a big deal? I mean, I get it. Like some people gravitate to other people. Like you will have Caucasian girls that love black guys. You will have that. They love them. They love going to them. They find them attractive. They find them sexy. And you have the reverse. You have black guys that just love Caucasian girls, love them, love everything about them, just gravitate to them. And then you have the opposite where that's not really my cup of tea. You know, and it just goes to that. It's like, I mean, like, Rodrigo, I mean, you're a good looking guy, but you're not my cup of tea.
Really? Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Not in shock.
You're not my cup of tea. And that's it. You see where it goes right there. Same thing in terms of you, Ryan. I mean, you know, but you're not my cup of tea.
My God, you're demanding.
So what?
You're so specific, man.
So demanding. But you know, like that's one of the things that I find like so complicated. Like why are we still hung up on that? You know, like why are we still asking that question? I mean, like we joke around and stuff like that, but why are we still asking that question? Why is it so important that I be Caucasian in terms of going up the ladder? Why is it so important that I be African descent in terms of going up the ladder? Why is it so important that me being, you know, from Arab descent or me being from Hispanic descent, why is it so important? Like why can't I just be taken at face value?
Now, let me, if I can ask you a question. Do you think the discussion, or do you think talking or having that conversation, or the conversation affects real life, or do you think that the conversation makes real life for some people more difficult, or do you think that real life for some people is more difficult, and then we have the conversation?
To be really honest, conversation, and that's just it. Having a conversation is like going both ways, back and forth. You know, like we're really talking, not speaking. You know, like I can speak to you and just tell you what to do, but like really actually honestly talking. Like, are we mature enough to actually have an honest conversation? Are we mature enough to be like, listen, this happened. It hurt me. It hurt a bunch of people like me. What are you going to fix it? What are you going to do to fix this? You know, because like part of it is like, for example, the history of it. A lot of the history was omitted. There's a bunch of history that was omitted. Juneteenth, like this is a big thing now here. Juneteenth, a lot of people didn't know about Juneteenth. I learned about Juneteenth, to be honest with you, from Blackish. It's a sitcom here. I didn't know about Juneteenth prior to that. Please bear in mind that I learned Caribbean history versus American history. We had bits and pieces of American history, but it wasn't as in-depth as American history. And even American history, there are bits and pieces that are left out. Are we really honestly going to have like an honest conversation? Or are we just going to BS it? Again, like if we're going to have an honest conversation, let's have an honest conversation. Honest conversation involves sometimes paying money. You know, like you have Haiti. Haiti is like a French colony. Haiti had that earthquake the other day. France was nowhere to be seen. The US was before France. You know, when Haiti had the whole earthquake, they speak French. You'd expect France to be like, no, we're going to go there and help Haiti. You know, they were nowhere to be seen. You know, like, are we really going to have like serious conversations about stuff like that? We have the farmers in Africa, you know, the white farmers in Africa. You know, they you know, there are situations where people are like, okay, well, you stole my land. You know, that's a big deal. Are we going to have honest conversations about that? We have the Middle East. Like, the Middle East is a Pandora's box. Like, nobody wants to touch it because it goes way back, even before anybody existed. You know, those fights have been going on for generations. Like, nobody wants to touch it with a long stick. But are we going to really have serious conversations about the Middle East? Not just, okay, well, I choose this side. No, I choose this side. No, are we really going to have an understanding like, listen, you want this piece of land? Okay, you want this piece of land. Okay, all right, let's do the following. You get this piece, you get this piece. We call it truce from here on in. You get your piece, you get your piece. Are you satisfied? Satisfied? We good? We good? We moving on? Okay. Are we really going to have those conversations? I mean, if we're going to BS it again, no worries. But if we are going to have like honest conversation, I believe that those honest conversations will be welcomed, will be productive, will be intuitive in terms of teaching the next generation how to deal with this. Because it doesn't make any sense we have the conversation in terms of our generation and forget to tell our kids how to deal with that again when it gets to their time. Because it's like one of those things that you have to pass on. Like, okay, listen, you don't do this. I know you heard this, but you don't do this. You know, like, and having those conversations with kids, you know.
You said like that you had never heard of Juneteenth before. You grew up in Jamaica and studied Caribbean history. And
Mm-hmm.
I am curious if like you feel like you identify very much with the African American culture and community in the United States, or not, because they have a very different history, culture, experience than yours. Or if you do because you do? I'm curious.
African American culture, yeah, I do identify with a lot of things they do, food wise, soul food. I can get with soul food. I can understand soul food. I see more connection with soul food, and I see where bits and pieces of things got left off on the ship. I see where it gets left off. I see where things got changed. I see where things got modified and stuff like that. I identify with them in terms of ethnicity, in terms of some of the things that they go through. I go through. Like, most people don't know I'm an immigrant until I open my mouth. I mean, even in the United States, they don't know. I mean, I still have a Jamaican accent. I still speak English. You know, it's like somebody from Australia. Like, they come here. Like, once you hear them, they speak English and everything, but you can just recognize right off the bat, you're not from here. You know, it's just that you can understand them clearly. You know, it's clear. Well, sometimes clearly, but it, you know, no, I mean, I'm serious. Like, the accents take a while to get used to. You know?
Yeah.
It's like hearing people here in the South. Like, if you go and you hear a really Southern accent, like Southern accent, you're like, say what now? And they're speaking English, but it's like, it takes a while to get used to that accent. That's why I said what I said a while ago. But I do identify with some of the struggles that they go through. I do identify with some of the scenarios that they're posing. You know, it's right now in this turmoil that we have right now, this political spectrum that we have right now. I get why they're doing it. I really get it. Believe that. I really do get it. Like I said, I live in an open carry state, which means that you don't see fences here. You don't. It's not something that you see a lot. However, let's be assured, everybody has their pistol. You know, so there's really no sense of getting a fence if you have a pistol. You know, so it is something that sometimes is scary, because you have some people who they have no business getting a pistol because they're not exactly all right upstairs. But to say that they can't get it just because they're not all right upstairs would be demanding on my side. I mean, they're entitled to that. However, at the same time, how entitled are you? Because, like, you have to be responsible with something like that. It's like having a kid. You know, like, you still have to take care of that kid. You know, the government says you're responsible for him for 18 years. You know, a lot of stuff can happen in 18 years. You still got to take care of him, feed him, clothe him, him or her. Take them to school, make sure they get a good education, save for college. You know, like saving for college. Like, even that's a big deal. I didn't realize how big that was in terms of, like, people are like, oh, I'm going to have a kid. Like, oh, I need to get, like, you know, like, a lot of money to pay for college. Then you start looking at how much a college actually costs, and you're like, oh, now I get it.
That's a really good analogy. Like, anyone can have a kid, but you have to take care of it. And it's not a bad demand for gun owners. Well, do you have any other questions, Rodrigo?
No. So what I got from this part is that to have a gun, you have to have a kid.
No.
No, I'm kidding. But it's better if you do, right?
Of course.
It's better if you do. I mean, like, you can say you're protecting your family, but like the whole spectrum of, like, having like, identifying with African Americans here. Sometimes I do. You know, sometimes I really, really do identify with them, and sometimes it's just like, nah, I'm not feeling that. I feel more like an immigrant in that situation. It's so unfortunate that this is a reality, you know, in 2020. It's so unfortunate that this is a reality for a lot of people in 2020, myself included. Um, you know, like to say that we don't want a world without this, without racism. Everybody wants a world without racism, classism, any kind of isms, you know. Nobody wants to be stereotyped. Nobody wants to be treated as less. Um, just because I speak English doesn't mean I'm superior, or just because I speak Spanish doesn't mean I'm inferior. Just because I speak Portuguese doesn't mean I'm inferior. Just because I speak German doesn't mean I'm inferior. You know, like a language is just that. You know, like, and coming across other languages, what I realize is that we have the same words that we use, just in different ways. You know, like you know, in Spanish, you know, like I would say look to get somebody's attention. Here, I speak to a lot of Hispanic people, and they're like mira, mira, mira. You know, and it's the same way. You know, like they use it the same way I do in terms of look, just look, pay attention to what I'm saying. Um, you know, and that doesn't mean that, you know, that person is more intelligent or more superior than anybody else. Same thing like being Caucasian doesn't guarantee that you're superior. Being black doesn't guarantee that you're superior. Being Asian doesn't guarantee that you're superior or whatever. Um, it's just that. Like my wife says this a lot, and it is true. You know, like people are just people everywhere. You know, you've got the good, the bad, and the ugly. People are just people everywhere. You've got somebody that is a moron in any country. You will always find that. And you've got somebody that's like really, really intelligent in any country. You will find that. You know, you will go to Brazil and you will find somebody that's just ridiculously intelligent. You know, just genius. And in the same at the same time, you'll find somebody that's just like, oh man, I need the patience of Job to deal with this person. You know, they're just really slow, really difficult, and you know, sometimes they're Caucasian, sometimes they're black, sometimes they're Asian, and that's what I found out in terms of Brazil as well. I found out that Brazil has a high Asian population outside of Japan. You know, like you have that as well. You know, it is not to say that they're not intelligent; they are, but people are just people all over the world. You know, like it goes to the character of the person. Like, how much are we willing to get to the character of the person? Like, are we willing to, like we said earlier, sit down and have honest conversations with the person? Like, really just talking face to face, kind of like what we're doing right now. I mean, some jokes are jokes, and the truth of the matter is, some jokes are really not that funny for the other half. You know, some jokes are really not that funny. I mean, like there could be a bunch of, you know, black jokes not seen as funny. There can be a bunch of Arab jokes not seen as funny. There can be a bunch of white jokes that are not seen as funny. And you say to the wrong person and you get beat down, like really beat down into the ground, you know. And that's where it is in terms of us being able to, one, recognize that, you know, you can't say everything that comes to your mind. You know, like, yeah, you think it, but you can't say everything that comes to your mind. And at the same time, it's kind of like this internal conflict. Like, do I really want to think the way I'm thinking? Should I be thinking the way I'm thinking? You know, like, should I even say that? Should I even, uh, how is this, is any, are there people seeing that coming out of me? You know, um, let's say, for example, somebody that is like something that's very common now, fat shaming. Like somebody is like fat shaming somebody. Um, where I'm from, you know, like in Jamaica, to be fat is not exactly a bad thing as most people would make it out to be. Like somebody, you could hear somebody say fatty, like another girl would call somebody fatty and something like that, and like plump and nice, and you know, it goes to something really nice. Of course, everybody wants that figure of, you know, like being this model type. Everybody wants that. You know, again, goes to the standards that were set prior to us, of what beauty is. But you know, like one of the things that I've seen now is that there are a lot more people who are of that figure that are basically okay with what they have. I'm not going to be a size 8, and if you don't like it, that's your problem. You know, there are plus lines for people now. There are plus models, and you find that there are a lot of people that like fat shame. Like, how dare you be a plus model? How dare you? And it's like, why are you shaming that person? Like, what is it so? Why is it so offensive to you? You know. But at the same time, you know, you see this happening less now because of the internet justice, because now you have a cancellation situation where, you know, the internet basically finds you and destroys you, you know, for doing stuff like that. You know, it's even more effective than police. Like now people are like, okay, give me a second, let me find this word, and they find you, they find where you work, where you go to school, where you went to school, who you went to school with, and like, you know. And but again, like, why the age old question, like, why are we still shaming people for being themselves? Why are we still in a position that we feel like the color of the skin, the size of the skin, you know, why is it still so important? Yeah. Where you're from, like where are you from? You know, why is that so important? You know, like okay, well, all right, I'm from Jamaica. Yeah, that's about it. You know, like I'm from Jamaica. Yeah, it's a tiny island in the ocean. Got a bunch of people that look like me. That's about it. You know, where are you from, Rodrigo? Brazil. Yeah, it's in South America. That really doesn't change anything. Yeah, it really doesn't change. If Rodrigo is a great guy, Rodrigo is going to be a great guy. Where you from, Ryan? North America. America. If Ryan is going to be a great guy, he's going to be a great guy. If Ryan's not going to be a great guy, he's not going to be one. That's about where it is. Like I said, people are people all over the world.
I suppose that like social networks and people getting in touch with people from all over the world is really spreading this idea, don't you think?
It is. Like globalization now, like many people are like this, there's this new phenomenon of nationalism, and many people are pushing for this. But the reality of it is that we've touched onto globalization, and I feel like everybody liked it. And as soon as COVID and coronavirus go away, we're going to go right back to it. Like, just like, it's kind of like, okay, well, I like going to Paris. You know, I like going to Sao Paulo. I like going to Rio de Janeiro. You know, you hear people say this all the time. Oh, well, I like going to Dubai. You hear it. Like, they're not born there. They weren't born there, but they just like it. They just like this place. It's just like something inside of them is just screaming and like, why don't you go back? You know.
And it feels to me that the whole nationalism thing, no, it doesn't feel. It's actually kind of obvious to see that, well, the internet and social media, it's new. It's very new, and it's like a reaction of conservative, very conservative people that are not used to the different, and then they react and they want to just say, no, we're better. We don't want any influences, or we just want influences. Like, okay, I can have your food. This food tastes good, but not the whole culture. You know, the part I don't like. So it's kind of a reaction of conservative or reactionary people, and I I hope and I think that it'll go away, but we can just have it be, you know. Ah, no, it's just a reaction, and then some people can get crazy with nationalism, and uh, so we just have to be watching them all the time.
Nationalism is like a very dangerous drug. Um, I get why people want to protect their borders, but like that's like aspirins. If you take aspirins like 15 times a day, it becomes an opioid. You know, like you can't be taking aspirins all the time. I mean, if you have a headache, you take an aspirin and that's about it. But like to take aspirins every single day of every minute of every day, that's dangerous. And that's what I feel like nationalism, like extreme nationalism is. You know, you can be a patriot, you can love your country, but here's the thing: do you really love your country? The good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, there are things in Jamaica I'm not proud of. I'll never be proud of it, but it is part of Jamaica. I'm sure
But
that
in spite of that, right?
exactly. You have to love your country even though you have those problems. You know, Brian, you're from North America. Listen, man, you're gonna tell me that you're the proudest of North America right now?
Not really.
There you go. So you have to love it regardless. Rodrigo, you're Brazilian. You're gonna tell me that you're proud of Brazil right now? In all the
No.
chaos that is in right now?
Well, if I did, then you would just you should just cancel me out of this conversation.
There you go. I mean, like, it's just a good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, like there are parts of it that we don't like. We can't stand it. But again, it goes back to that honest conversation. Yeah, you can be a patriot, but how much of a patriot are you going to be? When it's really going bad, are you going to still be a patriot? When it's it's going down in flames, like the bird's going down in flames, are you still going to be like, okay, well, we're going down with the bird?
Well, you know, Ronald, the two of us are expatriates, so that just shows you how much of patriots we are. we loved our country so much that we left.
That we left. That we left.
And both of you guys left to come to Brazil.
There you go. I mean, like,
maybe we thought, you know what? I love my country so much. I think it would be better off without me. I'll improve my country by leaving.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it is. I mean, like for many people, like you have to love your country. Yes, you have to be proud of your country. Yes, but you have to reach a point where you're like, okay, my country does this. Do I agree with it? Am I going to really be honest with everybody and be like, yeah, well, we do this? You know, am I really going to be like that? Brazil exports, you know, like ridiculous amounts of meat all over the world. Ridiculous amounts of meat. However, Brazil has a crime problem. You know, Brazil does have a crime problem, but here's the thing about it. If I go to Rodrigo and I say, Rodrigo, Brazil has a crime problem, you need to fix that, I'd be a hypocrite. I'd be such a hypocrite because Jamaica has the same crime problem. You know, like we have the same crime problem. What I need to go to Rodrigo with is like, Rodrigo, listen, you got that crime problem, I got that crime problem. How do we fix this? Like, what do you all do here to fix that problem? I mean, we do this. What do y'all do here? You know, and try to come to some mutual ground. But
and then if you look at the United States, like because of the recent protests, we have a police problem in the United States, clearly. So yeah, Jamaica has a crime problem, Brazil has a crime problem, but in the United States we have a police problem. So I don't know if like we've really solved that situation. Like,
and that's where it even gets worse, because here's the thing. we have police officers, right? But they're human beings. They go home to their families, right? To say to you like, okay, well, you need to cancel and you need to shut all police stations, that would be crazy on my part. But at the same time, something has to be done. Something really has to be done. Closing the police station is extreme. Maybe we need something extreme right now. Maybe we need that extreme where we be like, okay, let's close everything. Let's shut shop for a week. You all reapply for the police force, and then we do a background check on all of you.
And we rewrite the rules of what it is to be a police officer from the beginning.
From the beginning, yeah. Maybe we need to do that.
I mean,
maybe that's what's needed. Maybe. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to sit and tell you like, okay, I have all the answers.
I'm not an expert, but it seems like the system is broken. So
and it's not broken just to say that it's broken only in South America, to say that it's only broken in Canada, to say that it's only broken in North America, to say that it's only broken in Europe would be a lie. To say that it's only broken in Asia would be a lie. This is why I feel like there's like a global solution to this. And that's why I think like nationalism won't work, because like the problem is so global that we need a global solution to it. Like if we have like everybody coming together, like there's so many things that we say that we do equally, but at the same time we think that we're so unique and we're the only ones that do it. You know, we think like, okay, well, you know, here in Brazil we do this, here in Jamaica we do this, here in the US we do this. Yeah, but in America we do it like this. And it's like, we do that in Jamaica too. Yeah, here in Sao Paulo we do this. Yeah, we do that in Kingston too. You know, like it's not unique to any one place, you know. And that's probably one of the things right now where many people really need to understand that, again, you're not that entitled as you think, and you're not that poor as you think. You know, like
you're not that special, really.
You're not that special, and you're not in a position that you're not special. You know, some kind of humility on either part. Like to say somebody that comes from South America is poor, that would be a lie. There's so many resources in South America that it's a lie, but that lie has been told so often that people start to believe it. To say that, okay, well, North America is the richest country in the world, that would also be a lie. You know, like I've seen poor, like poor here, you know, like people living out of cars, poor, you know, and it's like, oh, but no, that's not a problem. It is when it's really cold outside and it's snowing. You know, and in my state, it snows. I can tell you, I've experienced a couple of snowstorms here. It gets really cold, like really, really cold. And then we're inside, we're in the heat, and we're still cold. Now, when we think about it, like we always say a prayer and like, oh, thank you, God, that we have a warm house. That is a serious thing here. Like to not have heat is a really big deal. And, you know, like to be poor and not have heat, like that is the definition of being poor. Like, all right, you're in Rio de Janeiro. Oh, I'm poor. Yeah, but it's warm. It's warm enough that you can go to the beach. You know, it's
warm enough that you're not going to die, right? Out in the cold.
You're not gonna die. I mean, you die from other things, but you're not gonna die from the cold.
Yeah. Something that I've learned by living in another country is that it's really hard to compare on a good bad spectrum, to be like, this place is better and that place is worse. That's a really difficult comparison to make for different countries. But everywhere is different. So some places have this really specific thing is better. than the other place. But the overall better and worse, that's a really hard judgment to make. Like you were just saying, like, all right, if you want to be homeless, not want, if you are homeless, maybe it's better to be homeless in Rio than in New York. But like on the other hand, I suppose that fewer people die of violence in New York than Rio, so that's better, I guess.
And you
So,
know, we'd be surprised. You know, like because New York is, it's a great place. We've been there, but New York isn't exactly, you know, wonderful as well. You know, it's got its share of problems as well.
it's great if you're rich.
It's great if you're rich. Again, it's great if you're rich in Rio as well. It's wonderful if you're rich in Rio. It's wonderful if you're rich in Dubai.
Yeah, but like in Rio, like there are poor people. They exist. In New York, like where are they? Like,
And they are there. It's just that you don't pay attention to them because it's so hustle and bustle.
yeah,
So you don't really pay attention to them. You don't see them. And again, it goes back to that time thing. Like you're moving in such a rush that you don't really get time to just sit back and just observe. You know, they are there. They're there. They're right in your face. But it's like, and I feel like that's even worse, being poor like that, that you're just invisible. I feel like that kind of poor is even worse. Like people don't see you as somebody, they just see you as invisible. You know, at least, you know, in another poor, you know, at least people know you're there. They feel your presence. But like for somebody to just look through you, like you're just invisible. I don't think, I mean, I don't want to be poor like that, but I don't think I could deal with that mentally. You know, like somebody just looking through me, not seeing me as, and that's probably why a lot of people now have such a big problem with the police here, because it's like they're looking through them. Like mentally, they're like, how can you not acknowledge that I exist? Like, how can you see me here, you see me talking, you see me moving around, and it's like you're not acknowledging that I exist. And that's probably why a lot of people have this issue right now, and it's exploded into, I mean, it has been boiling for some time, and it just exploded into, you just needed one wrong thing to happen, and it just exploded to what it was, what it is now.
In some cases, it's, why are you acknowledging me? Well, there's a bunch of people here. Why are you acknowledging me?
Yeah.
What is? I've seen a lot of videos. People saying, "Why are you talking to me, officer? Why did you come here to my house? I was just washing up my car or something." And so, in some cases, it's the selective acknowledgement, right?
You have that as well. You have that where some people just want to be ignored. You know, some people just want to be left alone. It goes back to that honest conversation again, where like there's this expression now here that many people have coined to people like that, the Karens.
Oh, yeah.
I
Let me
know,
talk to the manager haircut. Right?
yeah, I know a lot of Karens. They're wonderful people. They're not Caucasian, but they're wonderful people. But and sometimes I feel it's really an injustice on their name. I mean, they didn't choose that, but they, like people like those that are, they come out like downright and just like they have an issue with other people. Like sometimes it's just ignorance at its purest, just ignorance. They don't know any better. They grew up in that, and sometimes you pity them. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier. Like if you make the wrong joke to the wrong person at the wrong time, you're asking for a pounding. You're asking for it, you know, which is why we see what we see on social media now. You know, like you say it even the remote chance of it sounding racist, like this much, it turns into a problem, you know, because of situations like that that have been left unchecked for so long, you know, where you would say, oh, no, don't worry about it. That's just her. That's just Karen being Karen. And you're like, no, Karen being Karen can get me killed, you know. I mean, it's hard. I mean, to say that we can't make it better. We can. We just need honest conversations. That's what I think anyway, what I feel.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, I hope this was an honest conversation.
It feels like it, doesn't it? It feels like it.
It was intuitive, right?
Intuitive. You want to go back to that? To that intuitive. Well, we all had the intuitive training. So I think we learned how to have honest, intuitive conversations.
Yeah.
Ryan, how can we be intuitive? Can you help us?
How?
learn that?
You just are. Just be intuitive. God. Didn't you do the training? Come on. Jeez. Yeah.
Just be, you can't just be intuitive, Ryan. You have to. No.
And I have a whole book of rules here teaching you how to follow step by step on how to be intuitive, right?
All right. Well, that's enough. Enough joking around. Thanks everybody for joining in. Thanks, Ronald. That was a great talk. And we'll see all of you guys next week.